Okay, first I'm going to open up the questions to the audience. Oh, and we have one here, right away. First, he brings you the microphone. Please understand that Lloyd's Register is actually here as a customer of QIO Technologies. So I'm first going to ask Gary to explain the relationship and exactly what QIO does for Lloyd's Register.
Okay.
If you
Is there
would.
a microphone that we can?
We can share.
Probably share that one, please.
Okay. Can you hear me at the back okay? Yeah, so QIO was really a software startup born out of frustration. Our founders could see the great software technologies that was completely transforming how we interacted in the consumer space, so things like Amazon, Netflix, etc. Their frustration was that wasn't getting into industry fast enough. So they set about targeting industrial verticals that they could move that technology across into, and Lloyd Register was one of the first customers that we worked in there. Obviously, the combination of the data that they have and the capability that we bring in terms of AI-infused applications was an interesting come together to prove the concept. And we very much work as an accelerator with Lloyd Register. We'll kick off the idea, and then hopefully their teams can then take the applications on and distribute them to their customer base. That's the way we operate.
Thank you. Okay, question?
Yes, a question for Jane. By the way, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for sharing the. My name is Armando Lara. I'm with LyondellBasell. I have a question for you. In developing your machine learning capabilities, do you essentially expect to convert the advanced control engineer to a specialist in this area as well, which I believe they have very common skill set, or do you expect to develop another subgroup that specializes on machine learning?
My expectation is that we'll develop another subgroup. You still need the advanced regulatory control and the APC applications and all the sites, and you need people to monitor them. And we're actually planning a workshop in production and technology at the end of March to talk about some of these very things. Who owns the information? Who's going to respond to the information? How should the setup in P&T be in order to embrace the digital culture?
Okay, my turn then. Okay, one thing that I've noticed, my observation is that I'm hearing a lot of various definitions of asset performance management. My opinion is it means different things to different people. And what I'm finding is that rather than truly try to define it, some folks are just going straight to the benefits and trying to define it that way. One thing that I've noticed is that all of our speakers talked about risk, and I think that's a huge component that is getting lost. So I'd like each of you to comment on that.
It's a terrific question. Thank you so much, Paula. Karthik Suri, CEO for GE Digital, and really excited to have Rob here, who's been our customer, especially on the APM front for a very long time with Nova Scotia Power. Asset performance management, essentially the combination of the child and the stepchild, so to speak, to extend your analogy, is like a $7 trillion opportunity in the world. Asset performance management and operations performance management together. Split, asset performance management has multiple components to it, and you're spot on. Strategy, risk, reliability, health, and the policy designer and workflow that enhance each of these to identify and fix mistakes within that. So risk is a very critical component, both at the front end, which is your strategies for your APM that optimize the reliability of your machine, and your reliability management to reduce any kind of downtime that is required. And then obviously the health element, which actually reduces a time to fix as a parameter. So all of them point to the same outcome. Whether it's front-loaded or back-loaded is the power of a better together strategy that goes across multiple pillars.
Sure. So I'll make a simple definition and then I'll kind of describe it. So it's basically taking the best practices and technologies and processes from an operational perspective with the best practices and technologies from a maintenance perspective in order to achieve operational excellence. So there's a lot of verbiage in there, but truly this is what it means. It means different things to different companies and different people, because it's not just technology, but it's people, process, and technology working together to achieve something, some sort of value. Now, how mature you are in your organization will depend on what's meaningful for you, what component, what business process might need to change. Many organizations still run a lot of paper-based manual processes. So just converting, just going digital to some extent can be an important part of a step in the right direction for APM. Without going into a huge sales pitch, this is something that I think we're very capable and competent of doing, and love to have a dialogue with folks if they're interested about that. So.
Yeah, I won't add yet another definition, but certainly what we see when we talk to customers is exactly that point, that they're at a different point in terms of what they want from their assets. Different customers have different risk profiles. They've got different business models that they're trying to satisfy. The thing that we're really interested in with APM is when you look at a complete system or a system of systems, and we get all the fantastic engineering data that we get from IoT sensors and the capabilities we've got with edge devices, etc. nowadays, how do you actually focus your precious time on what asset you should actually manage next? I mean, almost every customer we talk to has got a backlog which is never going to get completed. They constantly have to refresh what takes priority. And one of the things that we're very interested in doing with asset performance management is actually providing what we call a FICO score, or those of amongst us that have got a sort of Myers-Briggs profile, so that we allow our customers to look at a pump or look at an electrical distribution service or look at a drive and somehow normalize that so that at a glance the engineers can look and see what the best thing that they should concentrate on in terms of asset management is. So we see a whole range of people at different points with the data they've got, and a whole range of different business models that are driving them to do different things in the asset management space. But that's what we're trying to do to try and simplify that for folks.
Okay, it's probably easier. And as far as my opinion, in Covestro, we do have a significant asset performance management system, which is similar to what you've described. But we want to take the condition-based or the condition rules-based monitoring that we have and combine it with machine learning or deep learning in order to have an even better result. And I know you can't have 100% on-stream time all the time, but if you could actually accurately predict when your equipment's going to fail and then predict and then properly plan your outage, then it's going to be a significant improvement.
I guess if I'm far enough down the line, I get to just say ditto to all that. I won't try and give another definition, but one thing that you did mention, Paolo, is that oftentimes risk is overlooked. And given the LR Foundation's original mandate around safety, for us, it's actually quite front and center. But I can tell you, through working with a number of our technology partners and with our clients, that the default is, how do I maximize my revenues? How do I sell more? Their concern isn't necessarily about how do I mitigate risk. So there is a little bit of an educational process that's involved when engaging with some of those folks. And I think your question kind of keys on that, how everybody has a little bit of a different definition, and we need to understand what our clients have in their minds as a definition.
Well, thanks. Lots of interesting stuff there. I'm going to carry on the risk discussion, and for our organization, asset performance management is about the ability to be making risk-based decision making, and more importantly, having comprehensive understanding of risk. For all of our key assets in our business, and the approach to that. So data integration and data processing, and ultimately the synthesis of all sources of data to have that comprehensive understanding of risk, and then making decisions based on that. So that for us is the broad definition of asset performance management. I think the exciting time we're in now is that the tools in support of that have rapidly got better and continue to get better. And we actually think we're only in the early days of how we're implementing tools in support of this as an industry. And so as more deeper asset performance management tools aid us in the acquisition of data and the integration of data from disparate sources, and then the synthesis of that, the technology piece is improving our ability to do quality asset performance management. And that's the big change that's going on right now.
Questions from the audience? Oh, come on. Don't be shy. Okay. Let's see. Somebody mentioned delivering intelligence. I think that's very important, and I would like your opinions on that, because that's really what we're doing, aren't we? This is what we want our systems to do, is deliver us the intelligence to do things more efficiently, more effectively.
Yep. The life cycle on this, if you plot the life of a data element, is ingest, store, analyze, and act. So in other words, getting the data out of the machine, ingesting it, storing it, analyzing it, acting through it. And I think Jane used AI, ML, DL within that. And what I liked really about that, which resonates with how our products is built as well, is that a lot of the analysis, both descriptive, inquisitive, and predictive, predictive being the AI, ML, the higher end of the stack, need to be embedded as a part of the product itself. So such that as you ingest and store and you get these deep insights with machine learning, one similar failure identification for a gas turbine in our M&D center is the equivalent of identifying a failure, which is a blade of grass in a football field, coming right out of Super Bowl, so to speak, right? So based on that sort of the learning capability and the data analytical capability being embedded as a part of a product rather than a project that is done one-off to identify a specific problem and going back to living our lives, makes the solution that much more powerful.
Sure. I guess the way I look at it is empowerment of people, bringing information, as Jane had mentioned. I think it was Jane, maybe everybody mentioned it, the right information to that field worker, that operator, so that they can make better decisions. I mean, ultimately, that's what we want to do. And if you do it effectively, the adoption rate goes very quickly, which means it's not too much technology. There's so much technology available for the people already that have to conduct work, right? So how do we make it frictionless? How do we make it easy to adopt for the business process, or potentially a disruptive business process if it happens to be machine learning or something that's new? But make it as easy as it is for the kids when you pick up your phone, and you don't really need to read instructions about it anymore. It's pretty simple, right? We don't want to make it difficult to adopt technology. So the intelligence part of that is really making the benefit, basically bridging the gap between humans and machines, but making it very, very easy to do that.
Yeah, so our take on it really is about, we talk about liberating the industrial engineer, given the tools that he needs to do his job at the point of use, rather than the amount of time that we've all spent in our past wrangling data, just trying to get the data together so that we could actually bring some intelligence to it. So we think back to the internet and think, what is it that makes the internet interesting? As a piece of technology in itself, it's not that interesting. It's the fact that It's got content. It's the fact that you can do things in context. You search for something on Amazon, you just get the relevant information for the things that you want, that you're searching on. And the other thing it allows you to do is collaborate. So if we can give those tools to the industrial engineer at the point where he's having a problem flagged up to him, we can give him all the context of the last time that maintenance was carried out or the last year's worth of analytics data. We can give him the experts that he can collaborate with, so that he can immediately get to the information that he needs to take the next decision. And if we can base that on the legacy information, the subject matter expertise that we've all got locked in our NAS drives and in spreadsheets and in blue books at Lloyd Register, then we see that as hugely empowering and bringing intelligence to that industrial engineer.
I guess I look at it in the way you turn data into information, that's giving the user intelligence. And you have to also be careful because it's garbage in, garbage out. And the more data you have, the more information you could actually gain and use that in an intelligent manner. And it's just amassed what's available on the market. But it's also very interesting, and I think that we're going to see an even more exponential growth in the usage of technologies.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of intelligence, as I mentioned earlier, there's this key component of, or this key group of operations and maintenance engineers that will largely be retiring over the course of the next 5 years or so. So the intelligence isn't about just gleaning it from a machine, but it's also about incorporating those end users. And I do think that's a critical piece to any sort of intelligent asset library or any sort of model that somebody would use. I think the challenge around trying to access that human knowledge is a little bit more difficult, but and it certainly takes a little bit more time. But I've found, or at least our team has found, that those models tend to be much more accurate, and there's a substantial improvement in terms of the end user adoption. So it's key intelligence to gather beyond just the standard digital thought of intelligence.
I think that's a really good question. In our organization, we talk about actionable intelligence, actionable intel or intelligence. And so, great thing to understand risk with comprehensively and with great detail. But if the organization and the business processes, the things that influence what people do each day, if they're not in place, then it's only an academic exercise. We spend an enormous amount of effort in, even though we're in a high-tech area of our business, we spend as much or more time in the processes and how people engage with those processes, such that the intel is digested by the organization. So advanced pattern recognition, for example, can deliver anomalies. So how does that get into your organization and become a work request at the morning meeting the next morning? Or if it's a higher criticality, how does it get to a subject matter expert for immediate assessment? If you're developing real-time risk, which we endeavor to do, great that you've created it, but what are the planning processes that consume that intel to get it on the next work plan to go after those risks? Then you're realizing value from the intel. So I think it's a very relevant question. Thanks.
Anybody? You didn't get any courage in the last minute or so? Okay. You're really making me work here today. Well, the introduction of all this technology to our operations and maintenance organizations certainly requires some changes in work processes. And as you go through those changes, are you doing it in a cross-functional way in your organization, or would you recommend that to your clients? Respond, please.
This is going to be the sequence.
You get to answer first.
Rob, use that microphone. Really?
What was the question?
Yes, so, yeah, please repeat the question, yes. So how technology influences people differently throughout the organization. So from an operator's perspective in a power plant, they see electronic logs and mobile rounds, and so that's changed their life. But a lot of their activities haven't changed. From a maintainer's perspective, although they're using mobile devices to collect information from their work as well, they are the benefactor of receiving the right work, but they're still doing the same work. So there's not a dramatic change in their life. From a planner's perspective, they're receiving real-time risk reports, so that's actually aiding them in picking their work for the next week. So that's not a huge change in their business. We're enhancing the way they've always worked by pushing better information into their process. So I don't, for a lot of people in the organization, we hope and our goal, our stated goal as we implement technologies is how is their job getting better, but in many ways still look the same. So what's taken time out of their day so that they can really do some of the things that they can focus on. That they're best at. APM, for example, one of the goals of centralizing all this intel is to enable technical people to spend the vast majority of their time solving problems versus a past where they spent the majority of their time looking for information. So it's a very basic thing. So in that way, they're not doing anything different other than their time is being better used. So I think for a lot of people, that's very motivating.
I can augment that a little bit. I think that's spot on, Rob. A couple of points, like the three dimensions to this. One is, while it's not a challenge, people need to understand the why behind the what. So as I said in the previous panel, a machine disruption goes from a business problem to a personal problem, and someone has to go in on a Saturday to fix it. So from that perspective, it is very critical for us to understand the what are we optimizing for through digitization as a strategy, particularly with APM, OPM, so on and so forth. Secondly, I want to augment Justin's point. Design thinking is critical, right? Just because this is at the convergence of OT, IT, it doesn't mean some of the consumer technology design thinking principles on user effectiveness, et cetera, doesn't go away. These are the same people that go home and open, Fortnite and play on their phones. Maybe not, but their kids do. So from that perspective, it is very important for the solution to be holistic, end to end, and that's where AI and ML also come in to minimize false positives, such that they don't get response stimuli to tune off and get numb to alerts. So from that perspective, that usability is also very critical for them as they think through this. And then third is cultural. Something that we learned through the course of the years is also it is very important to be a connective fabric between IT and OT, connective fabric between the digital natives and the digital migrants. People with deep institutional process knowledge who are ready to embrace digital technology are the digital migrants. Digital natives are people who grew up in the the FANGs of the world, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, kind of the side of the world, and bringing them together to solve business problems for them is a huge cultural catalyst for people to take their digital journey to the next exponential level.
I just want to comment on task selection because I think that's something that's super important. When you're looking at risk-based maintenance and asset performance management, one of the things, I've been doing this now for about 10 years and working with various companies to kind of on their digital journey. And when you start to really take an introspective look at how you're conducting work and who's doing the work, it's interesting to find out if you've selected the right people to augment that process or to conduct that work. If you're not failure finding or failure preventing or committed to completing a work order, for example, then what are you doing, right? Are we doing the right task? Do we have the right person assigned to complete that task? And are we picking the right technology to help augment that worker be more effective and productive? I get a lot of requests for, I need to go predictive. And I say, okay, let's figure out why, right? Instead of trying, we can't just leap. We got to understand the steps to get there. So I just wanted to comment because I do think that task selection is super important when we look at this field.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo the points about the importance of the user experience and recognizing that, you know, as much as we are excited by the technology and by the opportunities, this does affect people on a day-to-day basis. You know, some people are working 10-hour shifts 4 days a week. Now, previously they're working 8-hour shifts 5 days a week because digitization has optimized the way that that business can operate. It can have real cultural impact. So we almost look at it and say the technology, we can kind of almost, you know, use it to the best advantage to solve the problem in front of us. But unless we actually take the cross-functional team with us that are actually going to be responsible for using that as a tool and recognizing that that is a tool that gives them an advantage day to day to do their job better than they could do it before, then you can still come up against opposition in the workforce. We quite often see, you know, we call it, you know, a spaghetti of spreadsheets. That's a red flag for us because there's a lot of frustration within teams who are running their operations on spreadsheets. It shows a frustration with the enterprise systems that are there as it is. And what we need to be very careful of is that when we come and digitize that process, that we actually give them an automated workflow, an augmented workflow that actually does make their life better. So it's really important to take that cross-cultural team with you and recognize that it is a huge cultural change in many instances.
I was just going to add a little bit more to that. The cross-functional team is very important, and my reason behind that is because we want the end user to own the solution. We don't want him to ignore the alarm. We don't want him to turn it off. We want him to say, hey, why isn't this working? Or, hey, there's a problem, and actually own it so we can get the most out of the technology. Anything else?
Thank you. We have one.
Don't overset expectations here. So a number of you have already been down this journey of implementing APM for some time now. I'm curious to hear in your minds, where do you think you are in your companies in that journey? 80% finished, 100%? And then as a follow-on question, if you don't mind if I ask the second one, you're collecting a lot of data. Have you started to look at other uses for the data? One of the areas that ARC has been writing about is operations performance management. Are there other areas that you're looking at maybe to leverage that information?
Thank you.
Yeah, so the first question was a long time ago, so I'll try to remember. But we think that we've deployed a lot of asset performance capability, and more general than that, asset management capability and the associated digital technologies that enable those processes. And however, the thought that we're finished, it doesn't enter our mind, and we actually don't think we'll ever be finished, because the technologies continue to enable us to think about more things differently. So in our business, on our generation side, we've been at this for years, and so we've gone down the road quite a bit. On our transmission distribution business, we're just beginning. So we see that, so we're in an interesting place where we can leverage the learning and the change management that we've had in one area of the business for the other. But this morning, somebody at one of the sessions mentioned that it's an ongoing thing. So it wasn't a project; it was a change in how we do business, and at least to some degree, we carry on that mindset that we need to continue to evolve because our business is evolving. So having that mindset that there's no end, I think, is a healthy thing. I think I forgot the second question. Yeah, and again, that's something that carries on. We started, fairly technical, and as it turns out, our most important areas was on performance management, and not just of the equipment, but on the people side, speaking to planning processes and execution. And we got enormous jump in traction from executive level when we moved into that space because it resonated more for them than some of the more technical aspects of it.
Anybody else? No?
No, I forgot the question. So.
Maturity was number one, I guess was the first question.
So the APM maturity for Covestro, I'd say the traditional rules-based condition monitoring, we're excellent in it. We've been doing that for years. We have a directive on it, a C-suite directive on how we do that, and we have really good performance. For the digital technologies, we are really still in the exploration stage. It's been maybe 2 years total, but really the last 12 months, we've really kind of amped up what are we doing and how are we doing it. But we intend to, ask for some money next month and make a step change.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Just one piece that I would love to add, abstracting the question on what do you do with the data is typically APMs, especially for like a power M&D monitoring and diagnosis center, is in petabytes of data. So, that is extremely rich, and your offshoot products like OPM, optimization, et cetera, your digital twins, which combines this data with knowledge base, physics model, and an analytical engine will yield a lot of value. But also in a more fundamental level, if you think about a manufacturing execution system that's on a single machine, a manufacturing data cloud can then connect a network of networks. So you optimize locally for one machine, but then if you're able to stream that data up to the cloud with the right level of security, now you can optimize across a farm of machines. So each of these actually is capable of not only generating ROI at its own level, at its node, but you start stacking it up and abstracting data, you get exponential benefits out of it. So that is something for people to think about as you're putting a business case together. Start small, but there is an opportunity to build on top of that.
One more comment about the use of data. I fully expect that we will continue to use the data in other ways. And at Covestro, we are planning to put in a data lake so we can have both structured and unstructured data, as well as all the different types of platforms surrounding it. So there will be people, data scientists, who look for similarities or anomalies and different things to explore. And I think we'll take advantage of this mass of data that we have.
Okay, we're at the bottom of the time. And I'd hate to stand between you and cocktails in Crystal A, B, and C, courtesy of Intel and Wind River, followed by a dinner reception in the atrium that's just right near where that is. I would like to thank our speakers and panelists. How about a big hand? For their wonderful insight.